Welcome back to another episode of Dentistry's Growing with Grace podcast. Join Grace and her guest of the week as they discuss lessons learned in the industry and explore unique insights into ethical growth.
Hello and welcome back to Dentistry's Growing with Grace. I'm here with my friend Cris today to share some excellent information with you. Cris, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Grace.
So good to see you. I know that generally speaking, you're someone I look up to in dentistry and in life. You always have wise words to share. So I'm really excited to get into this and to have you on my podcast for our audience.
Thank you.
And I know we share a passion for patient care and for elevating our profession, this great profession of dentistry. So excited to see how we're going to be able to help do that today. First thing that I'm really going to ask you about is attitude. And This is something that I talk a lot about too. And we always talk about having a good attitude, and it's vague, but can you share with us some ways that we can develop an attitude to help our patients or maybe even save our patients' lives?
Boy, that's a great question. I think attitude totally goes back to mindset. And I think that what's most important is to really evaluate yourself and learn about what your mindset is. To me, it's important to have an outward mindset versus an inward mindset, where an outward mindset is much more focused and motivated by the needs and wants of others. And that's how I moved myself forward and grew in particularly in dental hygiene and in patient-centered care, was to be motivated by my patients that came and sat in my chair. And I feel that everybody that comes and sits in my chair, I have a purpose to help them and create a healthier lifespan, or now what the term we're using is a longer health span. You know, I'm not so concerned about living a long life. I'm more concerned about the length of my life be as healthy as possible for as long as possible. But evaluate your mindset. And another thing to do is to learn about what your strengths are. I think that's so important. I learned that my biggest strength is connectedness. And so I have a big need to be connected to other people. And that, when I really realized that and focused on that, that's what helped shift my attitude to really being patient focused and doing what I could to connect with patients.
People listening right now might be like, oh yeah, I care about my patients. Okay, next question. And I just want to stop for a second and say, what Cris is talking about goes beyond caring about people and being a decent person. What Cris is talking about here is intention and setting your intention for each interaction. So starting your day, for me, it's a prayer. For me, I pray, I ask God, can you show me the best way? Can you work through me? Can you show me the best way to take care of the person that I'm meeting with today, that I'm speaking with today? And your intention has to be pure. Your intention can't be convoluted with money, with sales, with your first and foremost intention has to be to help the person that you're encountering or the people that you're encountering in that day. And it's hard to do that. It's hard to do that when you're stressed. It's hard to do that when you're overwhelmed. It's hard to do that when you're in a state of being reactive because of everything going on around you. So it's no easy feat. It's no easy feat to be intentional with your energy, with your communication, with your mindset, with your attitude. But that's really, I think, the foundation of really strong patient care.
Yeah, and it goes back to intention and being on purpose with your patients and focusing on what can I do to help this patient, and truly, step into that role. I love to talk about it. Doing that and creating health and wellness in patients is a matter of stepping into the gap. And we had the opportunity to do lots of life-saving screenings, chairside. And when you do that, it gives you this opportunity to step in the gap and see where your patients can be benefited by your knowledge and your expertise. But the most important thing, I think, the intention goes back to, I had a question that I asked every single patient, and it really drove my ability to step into the gap for patients. And that question was, well, let me back up just a second. If I didn't know the answer to this question, you might as well take a 3-inch piece of duct tape and put it over my mouth, because I wouldn't know how to talk to a patient unless I knew the answer to this question. And the question is, tell me about what you want for yourself. Because when I know the answer to that question, all I have to do then is step into the gap of where they are now and where they want to be. And it took away the big need for me to tell them what I think they need in their lives, because people buy what they want, don't they?
Not what they Yep.
Pardon? Yes. So I just was able to step into the gap and then create lifelines that what I call lifelines, which are that connection between where they want to be, or where they are, where they want to be, and what the science is that I know today that connect and shorten that gap and create a lifeline.
I do the same exact thing. I'm in a totally different field. I put together marketing plans for dentists, and it's exactly my process. I say, what led to today's call? What are your goals for the practice? And then I go into, well, where are you at right now? And what's the best way to get you from where you are to where you want to be? And I really think everyone should function that way. If you're looking to serve and help people, you need to figure out what they're trying to accomplish before you can solve that problem. They have to know it's a problem before you can solve it, right?
Absolutely. And, I used to go to Dr. McKay, and I cannot begin to say enough about Dr. McKay and what I learned from him and what he helped, the potential he developed. He saw that potential in me. But I used to go to Dr. McKay and I'd say, oh my gosh, wait till you examine this patient. She needs a full mouth restoration. He goes, well, that's nice. You think that? What does she want? Well, I don't know. Well, why don't you go find out and then come talk to me? Because, hygienists we're so geared to tell patients what we think they need. And that's fine, but you got to find out what the patient wants first, and then frame your conversation and your message to that patient about what the patient wants. I mean, I can't tell you, for 28 years, I beat my head against the wall trying to convince patient of what I think they needed and to get them to buy into that. This is so much easier of a process. And it's inspiring.
Yep. Let me see here. My next question for you is, I think I know the answer, but I'm excited to hear if I'm right. What 2 major diseases are linked to mouth bacteria?
Cardiovascular disease, heart attacks and strokes, and Alzheimer's, dementia. Because we now know that there are 5 pathogenic bacteria that are can be part of the oral microbiome. And when those get into the vascular system through bleeding, it is the cause, not contributes to or is part of the process. It is the cause of atherosclerotic plaque. So we have a huge job to do to.
When was causation proven? Because I always have heard, well, and just from all different sources, it's not causal, there's a correlation, but it's not causal, it hasn't been proven. Where's this coming from?
Well, I'll send you the article, but the main place it's coming from is from Amy Doneen and Brad Bale, the founders of the Bale-Doneen method.
I'm familiar with them. Big fan.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And so, and now they've just finished their second book called Heart Health and Brain Health. And it is about the impact of those oral bacteria on our health and health span, and how, we are able to prevent heart attacks and strokes. I'm a big fan of testing for bacterial presence. And one of the things that we did when we started this process, Dr. McKay and I were part of a coaching group. We were coached by some coaches, and they had a program every year called Millennium, and they would bring speakers in. And so I think it was in about 2007 that they brought Dr. Amy Doneen and then Rich Nagelberg to speak, and they both talked about that process. So I started bacterial testing patients as early as 2006 because I had heard Dr. Tom Neighbors, the founder of Oral DNA, when he launched the program at the Midwinter meeting in Chicago. And boy, and the clinical signs that you see that there are some bacteria impacting the mouth and then the rest of the body is through bleeding. So I developed a zero tolerance for bleeding gums. Absolutely a must. If you want to talk
You
about
just tell the gums,
gums,
you better not bleed, and then they listen.
Nope, you just find out why they're bleeding, and it's most often from the presence of these bacteria.
Yeah. And so you don't have to go and shame your patients. You can educate them.
Absolutely. Yeah. We now know.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I'm excited too to see all of these connections between oral bacteria and even gut bacteria and the whole microbiome. It's all connected.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think there's a lot to uncover for the general population about the presence of different bacteria, and even beyond bacteria, viruses, bacteria,
yes,
parasitic
fungi.
Yes, yes. Mold, fungus. It feels like our bodies are in constantly seeking this homeostasis, this balance. And there's like this good versus evil going on in our bodies. I am talking about this in a very rudimentary level because I obviously am not an expert in this area, but it's so interesting to me. It really is.
It is. And the shift that was created in me by Dr. McKay, he took me to lunch the first week, and again, this is not what he said, but this is what I heard. Was he wanted me to start a wellness program. And like I said, in 2001, nobody was doing that. So I pretty much had to figure that out. And he said, I'll give you continuing education, the technology that you need, and a personal coach. And so, wow, what an opportunity. But I just realized so much that I had been participating up until this time in my patient's disease process, because I learned that the science of today, and even at that time, the science and our protocols were terribly mismatched. Because nothing really, except for, exceptional instances, before that, nothing that I was doing was really getting our patients healthy.
Yeah.
And so we really have to stop and look at our protocols and make sure they're matching the science. And we got to listen to the experts.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to the experts. That's so important.
So I know we touched on it a little bit, and maybe we already addressed this. But what does your heart have to do with your mouth?
Well, if you want to avoid heart attacks and strokes in the long term, get your oral microbiome tested and make sure you don't have any of these pathogenic bacteria in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What are the helpers high and the givers glow, and how can we access them?
Oh boy. I think, my husband died in 2016, and he had a heart attack in the middle of the night. And I had made appointments in 2010 for Gary and I to both see Amy Doneen in Spokane. And he was under the care of one of the doctors that had been voted Seattle's best cardiologist. And so he said to me, I don't see the need to go. If you want to go ahead. So I went. He didn't, but I am convinced that if he had gone to see her, he would be alive today. And so that process of losing him, I had to figure out how to thrive after loss. And so I found out that one of the ways that I could create that feeling of endorphins and dopamine in my body was to give of myself, financially, how I could help, just in general, because I crawled in his bed, and we took him off life support, and I said, I promise to make the rest of my life matter. And so to me, being able to give to others and develop that connectedness was what was so important. But what I found out in that process is that even the mere thought of giving something to someone else creates a brain phenomenon that they can see on scans, and they call it the helper's high and the giver's glow. And so they know that people that give are much happier people. And it can be giving in many, many different ways, but also in the book, The Gift, that's the purpose of gifts, is to then take the gift that you have been given by someone and to pass it on and give it to someone else. So that creates that process of the helper's high and the giver's glow, that it's a brain phenomenon that they can see on brain scans.
I have met so many people in my life that are like, I don't get these religious people. I don't get all the rules and all the things. And I'm a religious person, and I have come to learn that everything God has asked us to do is for our benefit. And once that clicks, you kind of think about life differently. Like you think about God differently, you think about life differently, you think about your purpose differently. And until that clicks, you're kind of just chasing meaning. But I hear you. I love that. I love that we're sharing that with people. And this is one way to get the helper's high and the giver's glow, and to feel that purpose in your day-to-day life, I think, is to make change in mindset. I think it's to develop an attitude, like we talked about, that could save our patients' lives or help our patients. And I just love that. I love how it all comes together. Kind of shifting gears here a little bit. Actually, I'm going to skip one of the questions and plug that in later. Can you tell me a little bit about the LifeGuard approach and how it can help patients and medical professionals connect with each other?
Yeah, it's just as let's my purpose when a patient comes and sits in my chair is to find out what their risk factors are. Those are the things, the risk factors, they're right out there. Let's do something with them. Let's mitigate them. Let's take care of them. Let's erase them. And the LifeGuard approach is I had a lifeguard and a physician save my life when I was 14 years old. And I swam a race with a big wad of bubble gum in my mouth, and they stopped me on the way out of the pool and asked me if I wanted to live to be an adult. And I thought that was kind of a stupid question at the time. But one of the things I look back on it now is why I think it's so important is that they could have let me walk out of the pool and not said a word. They could have just looked at each other and gone, stupid girl, and let me walk out. But I wanted to, when I went into hygiene, I wanted to have the kind of a relationship with patients where I could talk to them about anything. So when I saw see risk factors arise, no matter what they are, whether it's something medical or in their lifestyle, let's talk about that and see what, between the two of us, what we can do to mitigate those risk factors. And that's what it's all about is, ask your hygienist to partner with you. I mean, what a great opportunity. How many people walk into their hygienist and say, hey, will you partner with me and help me live a long, healthy health span?
So the LifeGuard approach is you're not just sitting up on this chair watching what's going on. It's when you see something that's a threat, when you see something that's could pose danger for the people in the pool or the people you are in that are in your care, that you vocalize that in a loving way, in a way that they can receive it, often by asking questions and getting them to come to that realization, versus just kind of sitting back and waiting till someone's about to die and then jumping in with the crash cart. You want to say something sooner. So it's
absolutely.
Yes, it's that experience you had as a child where a lifeguard took the time to communicate with you at that level, that protected you from a future emergency. It's that proactive, that extra step in communication. And there's an art to that, in my opinion.
Yes. And my saying is this to myself, if I see something, I'll say something, because I'm in relationship and you can talk about anything. And that is the second part of what I was talking about, the mismatch between the science and the protocols that we have going on today. There is also a huge mismatch, and we have to develop a new language of health and wellness. In fact, I wrote an article called The Language of Health and Wellness, and we have to shift our questions. We have to update our questions and now ask quality questions that are reflective of the science that we know. To give you an example, it's not good enough to ask our patients, do you brush and floss? What we now need to ask our patients is questions about, tell me about when your gums bleed. Or just questions that, because we know it's not just all about brushing and flossing that can keep us healthy. There's so much more to health and wellness. And that's the purpose of the LifeGuard approach, is to guard and guide the health and wellness of your patients.
I love it. I love it.
When I graduated from hygiene school, I graduated #1 academically. So I thought I knew all the answers. But what I really learned, and the most important thing, is today I need to know the right questions.
Yep.
It's not about the answers that you think you have to everything. It's about what questions are you asking? And those are the three things that I think require the shift into becoming and using the LifeGuard approach. Is we've got to shift our mindset from repairing the damage to preparing for health. And we've got to shift our messaging. We want to have messages and conversations with our patients that they'll remember when they walk out of the operatory and share with the people that they love and care for. And then we've got to shift our clinical habits to shifting, taking our patients from the danger zone and moving them into the safety zone. And that's basically the premise of the LifeGuard approach. And that's my approach that I developed when I worked for Dr. McKay in Seattle.
That's awesome. And this question, I know we could have a whole episode on my last question. I know that. We've got about 5 minutes left here. I'm curious what you have to say about this. What does the shape of your child's face say about their overall health?
Oh boy. I'm on the advisory board for the Children's Airway First Foundation. And we now know that the shape of your child's face has a huge amount to do with their airway and their breathing. So we always thought that, we can fix everything with orthodontics when kids get to be about 13. Now we want to see kids, we want to fix before 6.
Yeah.
And
good luck finding an orthodontist that's going to do it, though.
Well, you would be amazed at the emergence of doctors that are working towards helping open up children's mouths and their faces, children that are born with a high palate and a narrow face, a long, narrow face. They now know that these children that have trouble sleeping, they have behavioral problems, they ADHD, lots of challenges that children are having, they are now finding are due to airway issues.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I'd encourage people to go to the Children's Airway First Foundation. They have a huge portal for parents to learn about all that's going on with their children.
And hopefully that will help connect the doctors that are forward thinking on this to the patient, or to the parents that are forward thinking on this and wanting to be ahead of the curve. I personally, I'm a big fan of early intervention with orthodontics, but getting my husband on board has been a challenge. And then the orthodontists meet with my husband, tell my husband that my children don't need early intervention. And it's just this cycle of me knowing these things, but not knowing where to go to find the right orthodontic support.
Well, I would encourage you then to go to, it's called childrensairwayfirst.org. They have a section in there, all for parents, particularly moms, and they can give you some insight in how to manage that and how to find somebody.
It might just be that I wasn't at those appointments, my husband was, and they might have explained that we do early intervention, but that's not the case here. And I might have just missed some communication there. So, but I think generally speaking, it's still the norm to say, wait until everything is in wait until all the teeth are in and settled before we start doing orthodontic care. I just think that's the norm still.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, we're working hard to shift that. And what our big concern is, what happens or what is allowed to happen in childhood stays with that child for the rest of their life. And I'm a big example of that. And I didn't have any intervention until I was in hygiene school, but one of my instructors was an orthodontist, and he offered to do my ortho for me for free. And I jumped all over that. Well, the challenge is he extracted 4 of bicuspids, and then he headgeared everything back, which created for me a garage that was way too small to park my tongue in.
Mhm.
So now I have had a lifetime of sleep disordered breathing. I now have, in the last few years, been diagnosed with AFib. I have blood pressure problems. I have all kinds of manifestations of having my airway be reduced to not an appropriate size for survival. So I have to use something to sleep and get some oxygen in at night. The big challenge is, and as Amy talks about, is in children particularly, we've got to start with prevention. And what happens in a child's vascular system when there's a hypoxia, when they have a lack of oxygen, it changes the smooth muscle cells into these secretory cells that create the atherosclerosis. So we've got to start with our youngest, and boy, waiting until they're 12 or 13 years old is not the approach anymore.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to keep looking. They're still pretty young. I'm going to keep looking and keep hoping I get the right doctor if it is an issue.
But find one, just ask questions about, find an airway focused orthodontist.
Mm-hmm.
One that's hopefully not going to pull out teeth, and if they need to, they'll use some aligners to expand the palate and just create a great airway space.
Yeah, absolutely. Cris, that's all we have time for today. I do want to ask, what are you up to right now? How can we support you? Where can people get in touch with you? Are you educating people or speaking? What can I do to support you?
Yeah, all of the above. I'm writing 2 books at the moment. I am doing some teaching of 5 life-saving screenings that can be done chairside. And I just did one in Jacksonville, Florida for one of the dental houses. And so I'm going to be doing some more of those. And so I'm out there trying to help people understand that they can guard and guide the health and wellness of their patients' lives with the LifeGuard approach.
So if one of our listeners wants to get in touch with you to learn how you can help them take their patient care to the next level, how would they be able to get in touch with you, Cris?
They can email me at Cris at thelifeguardapproach.com. And Cris is spelled without an H, so it's CRIS.
Awesome. CRIS, Cris at thelifeguardapproach.com. Cris, thank you so much for sharing this wonderful information with me and our audience today. I really appreciate your time and commitment to
it's been my pleasure.
To everyone and everything. And for those of you following our podcast, please join our Facebook group, Dentistry is Growing with Grace. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms. If you'd like to be a guest, you can check out gracerizza.com where there's an application. And I appreciate you, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks so much.